Hi, this is Connie Flaidlin, and it is my pleasure to talk to you about the founder of AARP and the early history of the association. This history starts with the biography of a woman, Ethel Percy Andrus. Ethel Percy Andrus was born in 1884 in San Francisco and died in 1967 in Long Beach, California, at the age of 83. What do we know about what shaped Ethel? To the Andrus family, two things were important: education and community service. Ethel's parents, George and Lucretia, taught her to serve the community. The Andrus family moved to Chicago, where Mr. Andrus studied law at Northwestern University Law School. Ethel was also shaped by spending her formative years in Chicago. There, she had the opportunity to work together with community leaders of that time. The Chicago of the early 1900s was a city with a lot of social ills. There was much migration to that area and much poverty. Young Ethel Percy saw the difference that leaders like Jane Addams and other community leaders made in Chicago. So in addition to family influences, the Midwest shaped Ethel Percy Andrus' character. As far as formal education, Ethel attended Chicago's Lewis Institute in the early 1900s, where she earned her associate's degree. Lewis Institute was the first junior college in the country. Later it became the Illinois Institute of Technology. At IIT can be found the student file for Ethel Percy Andrus with letters, photographs, and documents. In the file there for Dr. Andrus, we can see her original application form to enter Lewis Institute. It's dated 1901, and in response to question number 8, purpose in entering Institute, preparing for, which all entering students had to answer, she had written teaching. After graduating from Lewis Institute, Ethel received a bachelor's degree from the University of Chicago in 1903. She then returned to Lewis Institute to join the faculty and worked as an educator for 7 years. It is important to point out that in those days, it was not easy for women to get educated. They almost had to choose between getting educated and getting married. In her student file folder is a very key letter. It's dated 1904. In it, she was writing to her mentors at Lewis Institute, and she was asking them to attend a play at the Commons. That was Chicago Commons, one of the pioneering settlement houses in Chicago. This shows that even as a young working professional, Ethel Percy Andrus was already giving back to her community as a volunteer. And we know that she volunteered at Jane Addams Hall Settlement House. Again, these houses served as community centers that offered a variety of services. By 1910, the letters in that folder revealed that the family had returned to California, this time to Southern California for the health of her father. These letters reflect her progress in trying to get a teaching job in Southern California. In this letter, dated November 25, 1910, Ethel Percy Andrus is writing to her mentors back at Lewis Institute in Chicago that she was using them as references. This letter reflects also how she was getting a sense of her own identity. She signed it Ethel Percy Andrus, and she was using stationery with that big letter A. She was coming into her own as a working professional. Ethel Percy had to start all over, and in 1916, after having worked for several years as an educator, was chosen to be the principal of a high school. It was the first time in California that such a position was given to a woman. Quite an accomplished and honor for Ethel Percy. She was given East Los Angeles High School, where she would remain the principal for 28 years. There was much juvenile violence in that high school. It is said that Ethel spent more time bailing out her students than in the school. This was a challenge to her, and she set out to change the situation. Having grown up in Chicago, Ethel admired President Lincoln, and for that admiration and in order to inspire her students, she changed the name of the school to Abraham Lincoln High School. She understood the symbolism of this president. Additionally, realizing that her students had no meaningful activities after school, she initiated programs such as Spanish Club, Dance Club, Drama Club, and others, including ROTC. These programs greatly helped the students, and change became very evident. The key was opportunities. It is very interesting that at the main entrance of the school there is an iron gate with an arch that Ethel Percy had made that read, Opportunity. The arch is still there to this day. Ethel started working on raising the level of community awareness, helping people to think and see themselves as a community. She offered parents vocation training. In this way, she started what is known today as adult education. That high school became the center of community life. Even while running a big high school, Ethel Percy Andrus believes in lifelong learning. She went back for a master's degree, receiving it from the University of California in 1928, and then in 1930, she received her PhD. Her thesis was about the education of young women. We usually refer to Ethel as Dr. Andrus because she got a PhD, and Andrus is her maiden name. She never married. Something else that we must highlight is that Dr. Andrus understood the importance of diversity. Especially in these days, we must learn from Dr. Andrus. She valued the diversity of her students. In 1916, Dr. Andrus wrote an essay for the publication of the National Education Association in which she talked about the importance of diversity and inclusion, in quotes, to bring to each a sense of his own worth by treating him with dignity and respect, by honoring his racial background, not as a picturesque oddity, but as a valued contribution to the rich tapestry of American life, to find fulfillment according to his own unique nature, then to find worthy of his respect his neighbor of a different race or color, to treat him with understanding and friendship, and to regard the heritage and the future of his friend as an esteemed part of the America we are all building, end quote. Wonderful. We see their diversity reflected in the Lincoln High yearbooks. One Lincoln High School yearbook donated by Mr. Frank Alexander to the AARP archives shows him as a graduate of the class of 1926. In that same class of 1926 was also actor Robert Young of Father Knows Best and Marcus Welby, MD fame. There he is in his yearbook photo and also pictured with his former principal, Dr. Andrus, with whom he kept in touch all his life. Robert Young delivered the eulogy of Dr. Andrus's memorial ceremony in 1967. Also in the class of 1926 was the famous modern dance pioneer Jose Limon. The dance company that he founded still is going strong today. The Lincoln High yearbooks revealed such diversity among the students. Asian Americans, African Americans, students with different backgrounds from different religions. Upon hearing the news of Dr. Andrus's death in July of 1967, another former student, actor Robert Preston, the Music Man, wrote a beautiful Western Union telegram. In it he said, "I've always been disappointed that our large, agglomerate, multi-racial world could not function as happily and as well as our small, agglomerate, multiracial high school in Los Angeles did. But then our poor world had no Dr. Andrus to run it." End quote, Robert Preston. What a beautiful testimony. Dr. Andrus's life was remarkable. Had her life ended with the accomplishment of being a role model as a teacher and principal, it would have already been an exemplary life. But there's more. Dr. Andrus lived the issues that we're fighting for today. In 1944, her mother became ill, and Dr. Andrus faced the dilemma of retiring to take care of her mother. She retired to become her mother's caregiver. Fortunately, her mother got better. So in retirement, Dr. Andrus did what many of us are doing. She became a volunteer. She volunteered as the Director of Welfare of the California Retired Teachers Association. In this position, she saw that many of her fellow retired teachers were facing financial insecurity. They did not have health insurance in retirement. After all, Medicare did not come into being until 1965, and in the 1940s, no insurance company was willing to provide group insurance for retirees. Also, many of these retired teachers had meager pensions or no pension at all. And 3, many had lost their savings in the Depression. One day, Dr. Andrus was asked by a local grocer to go and check on someone. She found a retired teacher reduced to living in a chicken coop because of a bad financial situation. That so angered Dr. Andrus that she became galvanized to action. She realized that no one was advocating for the retired teachers, and knowing the power of collective voice, organized the individual state retired teachers associations and formed them into the National Retired Teachers Association. This was the NRTA logo. Dr. Andrus was 63 at that time. Back in the late 1940s, the NRTA Journal already was using the words we still use today about why it's important to join our organization. NRTA asks you to belong, be strong. You can't do it alone. Dr. Andrus was a tireless advocate for older Americans in state capitals. Here she is pictured with former student Goodwin Knight, who was the governor of California. No doubt he must have supported her efforts in improving the financial condition of retired teachers. Insurance companies back then did not offer group health insurance for older Americans. However, Dr. Andrus had something in her favor. That is, the power of collective voice, the power of NRTA members. With this power, she could demand a better product. After working hard, after approaching close to 30 health insurance companies, 9 years after founding NRTA, she managed to get a company to offer group health insurance to retired teachers. What an innovation. What a market-changing product. Let's not forget that Medicare did not come about until 1965. Dr. Andrus also made possible a discount mail order pharmacy, another important accomplishment. Many people started writing to Dr. Andrus and asking, "How can I benefit from something similar? I'm not a retired teacher." What was her response? 11 years after founding NRTA, in July 1958, Dr. Andrus founded the American Association of Retired Persons, AARP, in Washington, D.C. She was then age 73. Take a minute to look at AARP's original logo. Dr. Andrus highlighted 3 words in the logo: independence, dignity, and purpose. Purpose means giving back to society through service, serving the community for all it has given to us. In 2007, NRTA celebrated its 60th anniversary, and in 2008, AARP celebrated its 50th. These are both important milestones in our history. AARP is a non-governmental organization, nonpartisan, and nonprofit, accepting all who qualify by age, regardless of sex, color, creed, or previous state or country. In 1958, the age for eligibility in AARP was 55. It was lowered in 1983 to age 50. Dr. Andrus created AARP's motto, "To serve, not to be served." Let's review some of the benefits and services. AARP members had access to the health insurance plan that members of NRTA enjoyed. They also had access to the discount mail order pharmacy. She was able to offer a travel service. These trips were designed for the mature traveler and had an educational component. This is a picture of the first issue of the AARP magazine, then called Modern Maturity. Dated October to November 1958, this magazine was used to educate AARP members. Today this magazine is called AARP the Magazine. There is also AARP Viva, a magazine in English and Spanish. Dr. Andrus was the founding editor of the magazine. She wrote a column every 2 months for the publication, outlining her vision for a more positive image of aging. This concept is remarkable. After Dr. Andrus passed away in 1967, her editorial columns were collected and some were published in this volume titled The Wisdom of Ethel Percy Andrus. What Dr. Andrus wrote more than 4 decades ago is still very relevant and timely today. One example is the quote from one of her columns: "It is only in the giving of oneself to others that we truly live." The publications were an important resource to inform and educate members about key issues such as Social Security and Medicare. Dr. Andrus understood the importance of being in the nation's capital. She realized the seat of power in America's social history is our nation's capital, and that having a national presence was important. So she founded AARP in Washington, D.C. However, she also recognized that it was important to have a local presence, to be active at the community level. In one of her writings, Dr. Andrus wrote, "The community is the place where we can be most effective." She had the idea of having people join AARP at the national level and join an AARP chapter at the community level. Then, in September of 1960, she traveled to Phoenix, Arizona to hand the Articles of Incorporation to AARP's first chapter ever. Our chapters carry out service in the community and nurture talent, nurture volunteer leaders. Some of our leaders, both at the state and national level, have come from chapters. AARP's first chapter was incorporated in 1960 in Youngtown, Arizona. AARP chapters are the means our members can use to live with purpose. In another of her columns, Dr. Andrus wrote the following about these community groups: "They are the means whereby our members can direct their energy into volunteer community service." The establishment of community groups was yet another pioneering work for Dr. Andrus. To this day, we continue Dr. Andrus's legacy of service. Today, in memory of Dr. Andrus, AARP presents the annual Andrus Award for Community Service at the national level and at the state level. Dr. Andrus also knew how important it was for the association's members to be informed citizens, informed voters. She wanted us all to learn about the issues, learn about the topics that are important to us. For many years, thousands of volunteers have participated in the tax aid program, which helps people prepare their tax forms. This work builds upon the volunteer work of the past. Likewise, the work carried out by volunteers who serve in the driver safety program today builds upon the volunteer work of the past. Our success depends on a collaborative effort, a partnership of volunteers and staff. Here's a photo of Dr. Andrus, AARP's first volunteer national president, and the first AARP executive director, William Fitch. Dr. Andrus was the first president of both NRTA and AARP, and that as a volunteer. The things that we're all currently engaged in today can be traced back to the original work and vision of Dr. Andrus. These continue to be our strengths, our core competencies. The first is information and education, a natural foundation because Dr. Andrus was an educator. Another is advocacy. We advocate for the issues important to AARP members, whether in the state legislature or at the national level. The third thing we do well is to provide member benefits and services. Also, last but certainly not least, community service and volunteerism. We give back to society through service in our communities. The key to why we've been successful can be summed up in three simple concepts. We have the power of collective voice. We have collective purchasing power in the marketplace to go into the marketplace and demand a better value, a better price, and what's most important, the collective ability to do good, that collective purpose that Dr. Andrus emphasized. The issues that we're working on today are the same as those back in 1947 at the start of NRTA and in 1958 at the start of AARP. Healthcare, economic security, work issues, housing issues, and a meaningful life in retirement. The work of AARP and ours focuses on leading positive social change and delivering value to members through information, advocacy, and service. Dr. Andrus had only the people that fit around one table to help her in her work. Today, AARP has nearly 40 million members, offices in each of the 50 states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, employs more than 2,000 persons, and it's helped by thousands of volunteers nationwide. Dr. Andrus understood the importance of having vision. She had chosen a great passage from a poem by Longfellow to feature in the lobby of the Dynamic Maturity Pavilion at the 1964 New York World's Fair, the first time ever there was a World's Fair pavilion dedicated to the topic of older persons. This passage from Longfellow's poem said, quote, "For age is opportunity no less than youth itself, though in another dress, and as the evening twilight fades away, the sky is filled with stars, invisible by day." End quote. As a result of her tireless work as an advocate on issues important to our members, when Dr. Andrus passed away in July of 1967, at the national level, there was this beautiful testimonial by President Johnson. In Ethel Percy Andrus, humanity had a trusting and untiring friend. She had left us all poor by her death, but by her enduring accomplishment, she has enriched not only us, but all succeeding generations of Americans. As we look forward to the future, we can recall these words from the writings of Dr. Andrus. It has been widely said that whatever many may say about the future, it is ours, not only that it may happen to us, but it is in part made by us. Thank you.